the actual business is done through relationships. And so you have to have some level of insurance expertise and network. Again, it's because of people business, you have to have a network.
We are all better together. Today's guest has built an incredible community in the InsurTech space, and they're doing it so well. I'm excited for you to hear the conversation today with Tony Lew as he talks about how he founded InsurTech New York and has created this incredible community that brings together traditional insurers, insurtechs, startups, investors, and other solution providers. And their focus is to bring about innovation and positive change to the insurance world. He's going to share with you the different journeys and paths that he has created and curated. For example, he has a mentorship program where mentors in the industry can be matched up with those startups and those founders. He also has another match program where he is matching up the big insurance carriers with those innovating solutionists because they are hungry for change, but maybe they just aren't sure how to do it. Let's jump into the conversation today to learn about the unique approach that Tony and his team at InsurTech New York are taking to bring about this ecosystem and bring everyone together to drive positive change in the industry. Tony Lew, welcome to the GSD Factor podcast.
Thanks for having me.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Great. Tony, our world have come together, which is great. And what I enjoy about that is that it's the insurance world and the tech world. So we are coming together from an insurtech space, which has been most of my career. And so when we connected, I certainly want to be sure that we amplify what you and your InsurTech New York team are doing. So thank you for being on the show today. But first of all, I want you to share with our listeners a little bit about Tony Lew's story.
Sure. Yeah, no, thanks again for having me, Misha. Very excited to be here. Just quickly about my background. I started my career as a software engineer actually in the 90s. Like 1999 was my first job working for Bell Atlantic, which became Verizon later on. I was actually working in the mainframe COBOL space, which actually a lot of insurers still use. They still use mainframe. Right? So I was an engineer working in the billing system. And then I kind of progressed my way through different functions and jobs, all in kind of the IT space for 10 plus years. The last role I had was building like a private cloud system for NBC Universal. But all throughout my career in IT, was fun, working with technology experts and others. I always kind of felt like I was a bit removed from the business side because I didn't quite really understand why am I building these databases. I kind of know it, but there was something missing there. So I wanted to get a better understanding of why we're doing what we're doing. So I got MBA education and then really enjoyed that process. And then I ended up kind of joining more doing business-oriented stuff. I joined BCG, doing just general management consulting, and later on focused more on product management strategy, working for companies like Partner. And all these years, like 20-ish years, working for big corporations, which has a lot of benefits. You learn a lot, but there's also some issues that comes in working for big corporations. You're just cog in a wheel, and it takes, for example, if you wanted to change a coffee machine in the kitchen, you need to create a PowerPoint presentation and go through the board and go through 3 months process, and they'll kind of reject you. You go through a process like that over many years, it gets a little bit, it kind of brings you down a little bit. But anyway, I always wanted to kind of start my own business. And one of the businesses I ended up starting was a consulting business, helping small business and startups. Later on, I met my business partner, David Gritz, who actually comes from the InsurTech world. He exited from an InsurTech that he co-founded in workers' comp space. And then he also had a network through Silicon Valley Insurance Accelerator, which is now defunct, I think, but used to be a pretty cool community based out of West Coast. So we kind of got together initially helping startups, naturally kind of help InsurTech as well. And what we realized is working with InsurTechs was rewarding, but for insurance industry to kind of innovate, we really need to bring carriers and brokers into the fold and really create like a ability for us to connect them, right? So, which made us kind of create this InsurTech New York community, and we started hosting events, small events in New York, and then really grew from there. And this was 6 years ago. Can't believe it's already 6 years. But yeah, time flies. We're having fun, and that's kind of how InsurTech New York started.
Now let's take a moment to dive into this InsurTech New York and the community and all the different components and parts of it that make it so unique.
Sure. Yeah. So we have different activities and programs for different stakeholders in the broader insurance ecosystem. So our primary audience is carriers and brokers. And as I mentioned earlier, this insurance industry can't really innovate unless they innovate. They're the ones who hold the power and ability to make change. Startups can can innovate, but without the support of the carrier broker community, it's really hard to change. Like 8-10 years ago when Lemonade started, kind of coming into the picture, they thought they could replace the community or the carrier broker industry. It didn't happen. In fact, they needed them to come along as well. So like I think everybody knows that, hey, we need the carriers and brokers to. So we focus a lot on educating them. So we host education networking events, including our upcoming spring conference, which is like a 1,000-person conference we host over 2 days. But we also host other smaller events. We have a claims event coming up in June. We have an Asian tech and broker tech event coming up in November. So we host that. And it's also a great way for startups and others in the community to attend as well, because they get to interact with carriers and also understand what the problems they need solving. And that's how startups can come to help them. And then as part of kind of helping carriers and brokers, we also have created accelerators and different matching programs. So we have an early stage startup competition where we identify super early stage, like pre-seed companies who are relatively new. And then we try to pick like the top companies from that. We typically get about 120 applications a year. And then the finalists actually present in the spring conference. And then we pick 2 winners. And it helps from the carrier perspective. It helps them understand what are the up and coming kind of new lemonades of the world that's going to, be successful in the next years. We also have this program called InsurTech Match Program, and we get basically like problem or priority areas from carriers and brokers who needs different solutions and startups to solve them. And so we, on their behalf, invite some startups to join this program. We actually match them up, and we run that annually as well. And then we also created another accelerator called MGA Lab. And as a team, we really believe in the MGA as a category. For those of you who aren't kind of new to the concept MGA, it's more of a P&C term than life and health. But I don't know if there's a proper definition, but how I define it, it is a broker that can underwrite essentially. And there's more nuance to that, but say agent or broker that can underwrite with backing of a carrier providing them paper and capacity. And it's a great kind of insurance entity that you can start with. If you're interested in creating like a new niche product, insurance product, you can partner with a carrier and start that. And a lot of the big InsurTech that's come up, like Kin Insurance or Hippos of the world, they started as MGA. And some decided to become a carrier, and some decided to just stay as an MGA. So on a given year, we have about 10 to 12 companies go through this program. and help them create an MGA business. And then about 3 years ago, we recognized that, hey, like there's all these startups that are going through our programs, and we probably see about 1,000 startups every year go through different programs. We have attend our events. And then we also have a pretty good understanding of what the buyers or partners of these startups want, because we run these like scouting programs, right? And so we thought, hey, like maybe with this information, we'll be able to help identify kind of the best next kind of early stage startup and really help them with some capital. And also we recognize in the earlier stage realm, there was less VC money going in. A lot of the InsurTech VCs that are established now, they typically tend to invest in later stages. So we thought, hey, maybe it could help these earlier stage startups and also, return money for LP. So we started a small fund 3 years ago, which is probably the worst year to start our venture fund. 2022 was really, really bad. But we've been doing quite well. Our first fund is at 26% IR after 3 years. And then we are on our second fund right now. So we'll be investing probably about 6 to 7 companies per year in the early stage. All the programs we have for carriers and brokers, we have a counterpart thing that startups can engage in, whether it's InsurTech Matchmaker events. So it's really like a two-pronged approach. Everything we do kind of works for both of them, or try to help both of them. And then it's also great for investors, because obviously investors are looking to invest in startups. So we do attract a lot of startups to come to our community events. So it's a great way for investors to find their next deal as well.
What is so incredible about your model is that you're meeting everybody where they're at, but you're also providing these journeys and these guidelines. So if I'm a startup and I'm wanting to make an impact in the insurance tech space, here's a path. And a lot of times I think when I talk to a lot of founders, talk to a lot of industry leaders, there's not always that clear path. And you guys have created very clear paths for, are you a startup? This is your journey. Are you an investor? This is your journey. Are you a carrier or a broker? This is your journey. I also think what's so unique about what you guys are doing is also helping both sides of that coin to say, hey, startups that want to drive change and innovation, you can't do it without the broker and without the carrier. And carriers that really want to innovate and really want to be on the cutting edge, you're going to need some of that new energy, those new ideas, those new innovation, and you're creating a space, a collaborative space that is allowing that to take shape. And I think that that's so unique. Talk to us a little bit more about that mindset, that in that planning that you guys had.
It's essentially everything we do, we have both in mind. The InsurTech Match program is a perfect example of this. Carriers need help. And why do they need help? Insurance is a huge industry. It's a $7 trillion industry. It might be biggest, if not one of the biggest top 3 industries globally, right? But it's an industry that's suffering from legacy technology problems. And the reason why that's the case is not because insurance is lazy or anything like that. It's just, it's a really old industry that actually was innovative sooner than other industries, because they've been around. So they implemented these mainframe systems probably long before other industries did. But they just implemented like 50 years ago, whatever, right? So like, it's just, once you have something, it's hard to like upgrade and change, especially if it's like kind of working. So that's kind of what happened with the insurance industry. Also, they're very acquisitive industry. So carriers will acquire many carriers over decades that they've been alive. So there's just a lot of different old systems like that are in the world, right, in their company. Now the other problem is you need tech talent to solve a lot of these problems, but tech, like the best software engineers that are graduating from like MITs of the world, they're joining Google, Facebook, maybe even some banks, right? Like they join these companies. They're not thinking about insurance. It's just not something that insurance is known for. They don't attract tech talent. They attract underwriters and actuaries. They're not known to be a hotbed for tech talent. And so they don't have the talent to like upgrade them themselves. So what do they need is they need external like startups and vendors. That's why, that's why they're looking for. They understand they can't solve these technology problems themselves. So they rely on startup vendors. So that's what the purpose of the InsurTech Match program is to connect the carriers and brokers to kind of the innovators in the world. And for the match program, we have companies as late as like Series B companies, and we try to kind of connect them. So we do that. Another example is MGA Lab. So MGA Lab, we created with the startups in mind first. So we actually get a little bit of equity from startups to help them create an MGA business. And we connect them to mentors, we educate them on all the things they need to understand to create an MGA business. But at the end of this program, their like final pitch is to the carriers who can provide them paper or capacity, right? So we teach them what to do, what to say, and like what to prepare. Like you need to have pricing models, like all the research you need. So when you present to the carriers, they can actually get capacity from them. And obviously, we need to have a relationship with carriers to make sure, we try to get the ones interested in working with MG.
And I think for you, Tony, your unique mindset of always thinking about both sides of it or all three sides of it in whichever case, I think is also very unique. So talk to us about some of your philosophies or your foundational principles. It could be something that could be modeled in other industries as well as bringing these groups together.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody is out there trying to create a community for X industry, I would think about who are the decision makers, who are the kind of the power in the industry, right? And where it attracts others to kind of join. And in fact, this within the insurance industry, depending on which part of the value chain you're in, there's different groups that attract. So in the InsurTech industry, as I mentioned, carriers and brokers are kind of the key point. And if you have carriers and brokers participating in that community, then it attracts startups. And then once startups and investors come. So like you have these three groups. So you have to think about who's attracting who. So like you have to think about who are your main audience and then who's interested in working with them. And then you can kind of create a business.
Here are all the different audiences, and here's how they interact, whether it's the mentorship part, the mentorship matchups, whether it's the investors with the funding, whether it's brokers, carriers looking for that innovation, but not sure where to go for it. And I think being able to say, here is the entire ecosystem, plug in from wherever you need to. We talk here at GSC Factor around these 6 attributes of being confident, inquisitive, imaginative, being present, resilient, and influential. And this season on the podcast, we're really talking about stepping into your extraordinary. So when you've been talking to those founders and you've selected those founders, what's that kind of number one piece of advice you would give to someone that is looking to enter into the InsurTech space?
When we evaluate an InsurTech or we also talked to a lot of founders who are interested in starting a startup that could potentially be in the insurance space as well. So what we often see is and recommend is if you want to be an InsurTech founder, you need to understand insurance, either you or partner with somebody who understands it, because I have to say it's not the most complicated industry, but it's somewhat complicated. And also it's a kind of like a closed ecosystem. So other insurance people don't trust you as much unless you have some insurance background or you have a partner who provides that capability, like advisors and others, right? And this is a very people-oriented industry. It's all done still, even though we're in tech, the actual business is done through relationships. And so you have to have some level of insurance expertise and network. Again, it's because of people business. You have to have the network or be willing to like hustle a lot, go to all the events, right? And then just like develop relationship.
Also surrounding yourself with the people that don't have your skill sets. So it's saying, this is my skill set and this is where I want to plug in, but what are all the missing pieces? That's where your mentorship matching is so great because very quickly founders can say, this is what I'm good at, but these are my gaps. Help me fill the gaps.
And what happens naturally, some of them end up hiring them as employees or advisors too. So that happens too, which we like to see. We like people actually joining teams, and we even had a mentor who was a mentor like 6 years ago, one of our first InsurTech match programs. And he was a former CEO of a big insurance carrier. And he was mentoring this startup. And this founder was a tech-based, he was more of a CTO type who started this company. And he ended up hiring him as a CEO. And like a Series B company, So those are things we like to see.
So we're sitting in 2025, right? Lots of innovation going on, lots of movement in the investment space. What is Tony seeing for the insurtech industry and the trends that are coming out here in 2025?
We have a few theses in mind, like few spaces that we're bullish on. So we like the distribution space. So we like digital brokers or MGAs that are solving kind of niche areas using the latest technology and data in specific areas that carriers are not in, either because it's too small of a market or they just haven't figured it out. So we like that space. We also like technology that help brokers and agents, mainly because there's a lot of brokers and agents out there who need help. And a lot of the technology that they use has direct like revenue impact. It's also smaller companies, so they can make decisions a lot more quicker. And so we just see kind of the traction, to be much quicker than working with carriers. So those are the areas we do like. But we also, like to look at underwriting and claims kind of software companies as well. But one trend that we're seeing is with the use of AI, and it's just so much easier for any startup to start something up very quickly. So like there's a company that we're talking to, that we started just kind of reviewing. It's a AI based company, and they started like basically early last year. They basically act like a real person. Like they have a communication with the end user, whoever that person is, and have email and text conversation with them. And everything's automated. And so in this case, like we talked to one of their customers, they're using it for hiring agents for their business. Because that's one of the things that agencies have to do, is they have to hire agents to grow their business. But it's hard to hire these people because they have a lot of competition with other companies, other industries even. AI agent company is basically replacing a lot of the caller duties, but they did it in such a way that they're even better than the real humans. And humans are still involved to kind of provide the human touch because the voice chat isn't still there. They still do emails and text. What's interesting is when they ask all their candidates after they hire them, hey, what did you think about your experience with our caller person? And they're like, it's great. And the only people who get it are like some of the IT guys. They kind of get it, or like they saw the signature and it was like not the full name signature, but she said like nobody can guess. So it's 1 year and they're already over $1 million revenue. So we are gonna see a lot more of these companies just like come out of nowhere and then have huge kind of impact right away, because technology makes it much easier to implement from a startup perspective, and they're also very, very good technologies. Yeah.
Final question for you is, Tony is a founder. What is Tony's number one lesson around being a founder, being an entrepreneur yourself?
Wow. Number one lesson, essentially a resilience, but starting a business and then sustaining it both requires resilience, because it's kind of pain in the ass, I mean, there are fun parts of it, but there's also parts of it that's just like pain in the ass, right? So you have those moments here and there. After you survive the second, third, fourth year, then you're kind of okay, usually, right? So you figured out how to at least sustain it.
What I appreciate about your honesty in this is it's a marathon, it's not a sprint.
Sure. Yeah.
And you will hit those different pivots and those different moments to determine, like, do I keep going or do I close it down? And do I pivot or do I close it down? And I think that so many times, as I talk to a lot of founders as a mentor, is can you dig deeper, just a little deeper, to go to that next level? Because you never know when that breakthrough is going to happen. I talk a lot about their seasons of doing and their seasons of being. And I think founders have this misconception that they always have to be doing, but you need the being season in order to recharge and reset to be able to have that energy and that push and that resilience to move on to the next thing.
Sure.
When you are talking to investors, what is maybe a lesson or a nugget that you would say to an investor that's considering coming into the insurtech space?
I think a couple thoughts. So I kind of mentioned this earlier, but insurance is a great industry for startups because it's a big industry, it's a $7 trillion industry, and has a lot of legacy tech problems that they can solve. So they need to rely on startups, right? And so it's a great industry for startups to build their business around. And because of that, if you're an investor in a startup, that's great, right? Because they're needed. They're like a necessity in this industry. Another point why it's a great industry is insurance is a very acquisitive industry. As I also mentioned, and they acquire a lot of these startups, whether they're MGA or broker. Then they're even more acquisitive for SaaS type of company. There's also a lot of big vendors like Guidewires of the world who buy CCC. They buy a lot of these companies. And I think typically it takes about 5 years for a startup to be acquired, which is like fairly fast compared to other industries. So if you're looking for an exit, which you should be for an investor, then InsurTech is as an asset class is a really good industry to invest in and get an exit sooner than other industries. And still, there's just a lot of opportunity. We're still early stages. Like it's not as mature as like maybe other industries like fintech. We're still 5 years behind. They say life insurance is 5 years behind P&C, and the P&C is 5 years behind banking. And so there's still a lot of room to grow. Don't let the Lemonade and Hippo, who had a big public market IPO and then had a downturn, they're actually coming back now, right? And a lot of the valuation bubble has like basically burst, and we're kind of starting to come back up. And so it's a really good time to start your journey investing in insurance.
So tell everybody really quick in our final moments about your conference coming up April 2nd and 3rd in New York.
Sure. Yeah. So this is our annual conference that we host. Been doing it 6 times now. Third time at the same place, Chelsea Piers in New York. It's a 1,000-person conference over 2 days. We actually have separate education tracks for P&C and life and health separately. And we have a Tony for booth in our expo area. We have cocktail events. So it's just a great event for you to learn about the latest innovation that's happening and really curate the speakers and the content well. Like we start with distribution. We go to like new products, underwriting, claims on both ends. So it should be a really great way for you to learn about what's happening in the innovation space, but also network as well. So we use a app called Brella app. It's a networking app you can use to connect and have set up meetings. So we see a lot of people who go to events just to network, people who just go to education or want to do both. We can cater to all 3 types. So
and you also have your pitch competition.
Yes, and then we have other things. Yeah, we have the global early stage startup competition. The finalists will be pitching there. We're also have another really great event. We're partnering with 4 universities: St. Joe's, Florida, University of Connecticut, and Iowa. They have picked students in their school and kind of their insurance programs. And they're going to be doing a case competition. And so 4 teams will be pitching against each other. And then there'll be one winner. And then principal is going to be the prize program. They'll give them actually custom checks totaling $5,000. So we have that. We're partnering with InsurTech Israel and UK delegation. They're going to bring their startups. And there's that. In fact, it's just 2 days, but there's a lot of ancillary partner events happening that week. I think there are probably about 10 events that week in New York, and so it's a great way for you to come if you're interested in connecting with the ecosystem.
Tony, thank you for what you're doing for the InsurTech community in all the various lenses and outputs and helping them step into their extraordinary. And this is an industry I started in many years ago, but it's fun to see The opportunities are abundant. It's not just for investors, but it's also huge opportunities for those startups and the connections that you're creating and truly the community. And you're right, the insurance community, we are all about networking and building those relationships over time.
Yeah.
And so I think that that is so crucial. Let's get some shit done for InsurTech. Thank you for listening to the GST Factor podcast. I'm your host, Misha Blaymeyer-Farish. Be sure to connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram, as I love connecting with our listeners to hear how you are getting shit done in your personal and professional life. Be sure to visit our website at gstfactor.com, where you can take a persona assessment that's going to help you figure out what type of GSDer you are. There's also a ton of resources and tools for both yourself and your tiny humans in your life. We appreciate you rating and subscribing our podcast episode today. And don't forget to get shit done.